Oh, T's pretty good at the CSGO, but all I have is this little $5 keyboard here. I don't know if I can keep up with him with one of these bad boys. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you guys the differences and whether or not your keyboard matters.
Young bass guy in Olympics, stay fucking bitches.
So I recently got back from my girlfriend's house and I was using one of her keyboards she had laying around with my computer, and when I got back home I realized that I packed the keyboard up with my stuff, and it gave me an idea. I recently got this Corsair Strafe keyboard which cost me about 140 bucks, and I was just wondering, how does this keyboard stack up against this little $5 Asus keyboard my girlfriend got from the Goodwill? So I decided to go ahead and play a competitive game of CSGO on my Corsair keyboard, and after that I decided to hook up the Asus keyboard and test it out. One thing I noticed right off the bat while I was playing it, and it could just be that I'm not used to the keyboard, is the key placement. It definitely isn't as comfortable as using the Corsair keyboard. All the keys are very tightly pushed together, and it's almost like this chiclet style keyboard too, so it feels a lot different than using my mechanical keyboard, of course. However, due to how low profile the keys are, the key travel is very short, which gave me a good response time when I was using it, and I didn't have any problems there. As I was playing the game more and more, it felt pretty natural to me, just like if I was using any keyboard. I think this keyboard came from one of their Asus Essentio series computer bundles, because that's just what it seemed like. I couldn't find this keyboard online anywhere, to be honest with you. So it's a pretty basic keyboard. You don't really have media controls, but you do have volume options up on separate buttons at the top of the keyboard, which is always nice to have. They feel a little weird, but you know, they work. They're buttons. It is a full keyboard with a number pad if you need to use that thing. I personally never really used the number pad. I just use the numbers above the keyboard. I just find it more comfortable. But it is a full-size keyboard, which is useful. The build quality is, I guess it's pretty decent. It is an Asus keyboard, which I guess has decent build quality. I'm not a keyboard connoisseur, not a keyboard professional, but I'm just speaking off of a basic consumer standpoint. I have had a few keyboards, and some cheaper, some better. It is nicely, sturdily designed, it seems, if that's a word. Now when we move on to the Corsair Strafe, it obviously is fully backlit. It has a lot more going on with it. It's kind of heavier. It is pretty hefty keyboard, very nice construction. And when it comes down to the design of these things, I actually watched a video on the factories these are made in, and they are made with a lot of detail and a lot of care. It is down to the key. These are rigorously tested, and they're put together very well. With that being said, that should be a standard if you're buying something that's over $100. I've heard of poor quality control with Razer products, which is kind of bad, I guess. I personally have a Razer mouse, and I haven't had any issues with it other than the weird Synapse software not wanting to work right. But the keyboard design itself is very good, and I trust that it's going to last me a long time. It also has a nice USB port on the back, which the Asus keyboard doesn't have, and it's separately powered through another USB port you hook up to the computer. So I have all my USB hookups through a dongle that's plugged into the keyboard, so they're not taking up space around the computer, which is really nice. So let's talk about how comfortable both keyboards are. Obviously, I'm going to think the Corsair is a little more comfortable. I've been using cheap keyboards for a while, and then moving on to the Corsair and using it for a long time. It has a really nice feel to it with all the keys evenly spaced out. The mechanical switches are nice, and this feels really comfortable with the wrist rest that it includes. Moving on to the Asus keyboard, jumping from the keyboard that I have down to the Asus, it felt a little weird at first, but honestly, it's kind of like buying a 144 Hz monitor. You don't really notice the difference until you've used the bigger product for a while. So if using cheap keyboards is something you're going to do for a long period of time, if this is something you're going to be using for a while, you're probably not going to notice it being uncomfortable. You're going to get used to it, and it's going to work perfectly fine for you. Now when it comes down to performance, key travel, and all of that good stuff, I didn't have any issues playing CSGO with this for over an hour-long session of a competitive game. It worked pretty good for me. The key placement is a little short, so you got to keep your fingers scrunched up together a little more than you would on the Corsair keyboard, but like I said, this is something you could probably get used to if you used it for a while. And when it comes down to the core performance, it's going to get the job done. There's no delays in response time, and everything works quick and snappy just as it would on my Corsair keyboard. Now with quality in mind, I don't think you're going to have to worry about this thing breaking on you. If it did, you can probably find these things extremely cheap. My girlfriend found one in a Goodwill for $5. So if it did break, you wouldn't really be at a loss. You could just go pick you up another keyboard. With the Corsair keyboard, it's going to come with warranties, and you're going to be able to return it and all that good stuff, but you may have a little more worry on your side. If you spend that much money on a keyboard, you don't want it to break on you, and you might stress out about that kind of thing. Maybe. I don't really care too much. It works good for me, and I don't have any problems with it. With that that being said, if you're building a PC and you need to cut corners for a budget, I think having a cheap keyboard would be okay. It wouldn't cause problems as long as you have something with short key travel and has no delay. You shouldn't have any issues there. If you needed to use a cheap $5 Asus keyboard, I think it would definitely get the job done, especially if you just needed it for a short period of time and you plan on upgrading it later. You'd be perfectly fine using one of these. When it comes down to performance, it gets the job done. With that being said, the Corsair keyboard is definitely a luxury product. It's not a necessity. It's nice to have. It's nice to have all the colors popping up on the keyboard, but it's by no means a serious advantage when it comes down to more casual play. And I don't think you're going to have a huge advantage by using one of these over a $5 keyboard if you're doing basic competitive casual gaming. I don't think you can go wrong with a cheap keyboard if you don't want to spend money on a more expensive keyboard. There's not a huge advantage by using one of these things, and I just thought this would be fun to discuss with you guys. What is your opinions on this? Have you ever used a cheaper keyboard and then switched over to a more expensive keyboard and had a much better experience, or is it not really affected you much? Be sure to start a conversation in the comments if you'd like. Drop a like if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys on the next one. I know this has been a little bit of a different video, but I hope you guys still enjoyed it. It's been T. Let me know if you want more stuff like this, and I'm out.